Hey guys, it's Marty from Two Line Slot Cars, and we're here with Steve Hulsman. Steve had a great race at the Eastern Championships a few weeks ago, and he sent his cars home with me, and we thought we'd do another breakdown video. This is becoming a habit, Steve. Breaking down your cars.
Well,
That's it,
I mean,
right? That's good, right?
success brings that, right?
Yeah, that's right. But you finished third in both classes, and I think you have great cars. I opened the box and I ran some laps on my track with them, just to get a good feel for them because I wanted to compare them to my cars, because I was real in touch with those cars, and I wanted to see if I could really tell a difference. And you crushed my yellow lane lap record. Put like 3 laps in with it. So, and that was with the GT car. But which one do you want to break down first? You want to talk about?
Let's do the GT car
All
first,
right.
since that was the first race. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ran GT. This is a NSR, obviously, the C8 Corvette. Kind of break this down, uh, just the basics, and then we'll take the lid off of it and kind of look at the chassis and dive in. But talk a little bit about that
Uh,
race specifically,
sure.
and then we'll jump into the tuning.
Okay. Um, well, first of all, the car is built to a set of rules. So the NSR East Coast Nationals has a specific set of rules, and the car is perfectly built for those rules. So anything that you see on the car or about the car is legal in this race. So I guess the first thing we can talk about is it has a Lexan interior, and it has a Lexan windshield package as well as the interior package, and that just keeps the center of gravity lower on the car. And that was, part of the legal package that you could do. Um, I tinted the windows, but you can still see the driver. You have to be able to see
Right.
the driver, and
Oops.
yeah, there you go. And so yeah, the let's see, where do we start? Yeah, let's take the
Well,
body off, I
let's
guess.
talk about the bottom first before we take that
Okay,
off.
sure. Yeah,
Um,
so yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, most people went with the angle winder. There were a few sidewinders in this class, but the fact that angle winder was an option, a lot of people went. Why would you choose an angle winder over sidewinder?
Um, well, the motor, first of all, has way more torque, and it's just a faster motor overall. Um, I set the car up as a sidewinder, even though it's an angle winder, pod design. And one of the reasons why I do that is because it's easy to change the spur gear if you need to.
Right.
You can slide them on and slide them off, whereas a true angle winder, you can't do that. And you can also have a little bit wider range of gear ratios, um, and it gets you into a higher gear ratio. And, which brings up, maybe one of the reasons why I was not as happy with the car at the Nationals as I was at my house. The track wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And so I had the car geared in a way that it was able to pass and have really quick acceleration, but maybe not as much top end, is gearing the car a little bit lower. So I think that car is a 1234, and I think that math works out to be somewhere around a 286 maybe,
Yeah, I think
or
that sounds right.
yeah, which most people like, why in the world would you have it geared there? And quite frankly, the car could handle every bit of that at the end of the straightaway. But the problem is that the grip, when you start losing grip on a track, or when the track is not as grippy, you lose the advantages of having that quickness of the car. And a big part of that race can be being able to overtake people very quickly, um, because you get into situations where maybe there's some jockeying around or people not letting you pass, or if you do try to pass them, you won't find yourself in the slot anymore.
Right.
And some of that is not necessarily on purpose. It's just, the track is slick and that back into the cars move around a lot. So the car was on my track. Um, Apparently the grip level was quite a bit higher than what we were dealing with there at the Nationals, for a variety of different reasons, I guess. But I didn't have enough practice time, as far as running, having the ability to run laps, uh, you know, I guess consistently. So what I'm saying is that when I was on the driver's stand trying to practice, I only got one go around, one time, or 3 minutes in each lane before qualifying or before the race started. And, what I was running into is, I was up on the driver's stand with a variety of different levels of drivers, okay?
Right.
So, I never really had an opportunity to run the car and say to myself, "Okay, I have to change the gearing because the track just doesn't have the grip that I need to make this work."
Right.
And so I said to myself, well, I can't really change things based on what's happening here in practice because I can't really link good laps together because there's so much marshaling going on, people leaning over the tracks, etc.
Yeah, it was tough to see.
It's tough to see, and you don't want to run into other cars or somebody's hand marshaling a car or anything like that. So the gear ratio was in question. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I struggled a little bit and wasn't able to be more competitive with Andrea. But, that's another story. So,
Sure.
anyway, back to the car. Yeah, the Lexan interior you were just holding up there is taped in, not necessarily glued in, because you want to have flexibility in the body as well as the interior. So
Right.
you don't want that to be stiff,
Right.
because for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
So
which is what something that NSR is doing stock with the C8s, right? That
yeah,
interior that they
they
put
do
in,
do that.
it's got some
It's a
float to it, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's a 3-point system now instead of a 4-point system, and so that it does allow the body to float. Yes.
Okay, and so it looks like you went with a steel spur, not a nylon, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's metal on metal, yeah,
metal,
on
metal.
the
Yeah,
gears,
it's
and
very smooth.
it's a sprint
You can,
race. It's a sprint race. It's not an endurance race. So longevity wise, yeah, there probably could be some issues there. But
yeah, you weren't going to run into
I,
that.
right, exactly. So it's just I like that, and it works well, at least in the GT cars for me.
Yeah. So, you've got the motor glued in to the pod.
Yes, that's a must. That
It's
that motor produces a lot of torque
Yep,
and a lot of RPM, and you really need to have that thing seated extremely well, and gluing is about the only way that you can do that.
yep. It's real nice and tidy, organized, like a car should be.
Mhm.
Note how the wiring is routed. This
Yeah.
thing is very smooth. How it snaps back in. So the few times you did come out of the slot, you're in and out, or back in easy. So that's a nice job. Guys should do that. We see people struggle
Yeah,
on the track all the time.
the
Not
one wire there is rolled over it should be rolled into the engine or in front of the engine. It's kind of see the loop,
Yeah,
that the other wire. Yeah,
yeah, right
that
here.
loop should be rolled in. It's kind of rolled out right now for whatever
Yeah,
reason, but yeah, there you go.
yep,
Yeah, that keeps everything really nice and perfect. And
yep.
yep.
And you are running. So you do have a. I was looking at the rear axle. Oops, get it right here, so people can get a good look at it. So you do have an
Mhm.
axle stop on there.
Yep.
Is that
Again, that's for yeah, gear changes. If you're changing or messing with the gearing, it'll keep the axle where you want it, when you put it back together instead of having everything, falling apart
Right.
essentially. So, yeah, that's a must in my opinion.
Yeah. I guess that's one thing that I haven't really experimented with much, that I should, because yeah, you're resetting your whole rear end up, every time you change the spur out. Um,
Right.
so well, if you got to do a quick change, it really is an advantage. The other thing everybody will notice is, where's the ballast?
Right. There
There's
isn't
none.
any.
There's none.
There
Right.
it again, this is how to learn to tune a car for plastic track, which is,
Right.
and specific plastic track at that. Every track is different, obviously. On a wood track, you're gonna have to add some weight. The grip level on, a wood track potentially is much higher. Although if you do set up a plastic track correctly, you can get a really high grip level. It just depends on how dirty the atmosphere is and, what you're dealing with. So
Right.
you just have to tune the car. I can't emphasize that enough for what you have. But you also have to be able to make some legitimate laps when you're practicing to see exactly what the car is doing.
Yeah.
So, back to that. But
Yeah.
I think,
Super light. You're running the front, very light front
yeah,
wheels.
so it's a tripod configuration, and everybody was looking at my cars, in the pits, and, I fielded I don't know how many questions, because, I'm obviously running a pretty interesting front end setup, and, that's with the wheels up completely off the ground, which other people try as well, but what my theory was there is moving the center of gravity, or trying to keep the center of gravity as close to the center line of the car as possible. And there's no rule saying that you had to use the front wheel spacers.
Right.
So I took those out and moved the wheels in, and then up as high as possible. Now, a lot of people were telling me, man, I just changed my car. I didn't say anything to you, but I wanted to, now that I did, it's like it really improved the performance of my car. And I said, well, you can set your car up with a front end like that, but if the rest of the car is not set up properly, it might not work in your favor.
Right.
And I know Dusty was talking to me about that a little bit. And, one of the things that has to happen there is that when weight's put on the front of the car, as if it were going through the corner, if your real wheels are leaving the track, uh, you're not going to have a good time with the car.
Right.
And that goes for any scenario, right? Like
Right.
you don't want the weight to leave the rear tires. And a lot of people don't have their car set up correctly and try to move the front wheels up and create a tripod scenario, but don't have the rest of the car set up correctly, and it doesn't react right. It's
Right.
very inconsistent, does a lot of different things. So, that's something that we can get into at a later date. But
Yeah.
anyway, if
So
people
part
have
part of
questions
that
about it.
is setting up this rear correctly, this pod,
Right.
and so, you have a slight bit of movement in this pod. It's
Mhm.
hard to pick up
Yeah,
on camera.
yeah, there's a little bit of movement left to right, but there's really no movement, or you don't want deflection necessarily, or too
Right.
much deflection, right? You want a little bit because you're trying to gain as much traction as possible, but you're really trying to isolate what's going on there,
Right.
and actually give the pod a direction to move instead of just an erroneous type of direction.
Sure.
um,
Yeah, you're
and
wanting to
so
you're wanting to control it so that with,
right, right,
I'm
yeah,
not going to change your pod, to know how many turns that is, but, I mean, you're controlling some of that with tape as well, just to dampen that.
right, the tape dampens the movement for sure, and
Yeah.
then I've got Slotting Plus, small head,
Mhm.
screws in the back there, which provide, some movement side to side. The shafts on them are a little bit narrower.
Yeah.
Um, so that's that's kind of a key element there. But kind of the crux of getting this car and really any car to perform correctly is flattening everything and
Right.
flattening it in a way that the pod marries to the chassis. You have to have that. If your pod's tweaked and your chassis is flat, it's not going to work. If your pod's flat and your chassis is tweaked, that's not going to work. Everything really, you have to be very critical of when you're building these cars. And it's like I have to emphasize, it's not how quickly can I get it on the track, it's how well can I put this car together. And so when it does get on the track, it performs really well. And the other part of this is the front end, how low the front end is to the track. You don't
Right.
want to have it so low that it makes contact with the track, but you want to have it low enough, right? It's like it's right down on there, but you want to have it low enough to where the car can work as a tripod, and the chassis actually comes in contact with the track. And that's where you're getting that balance from, right?
Right.
It's not a and there's resistance there too. If you push on the front of the chassis, there's some resistance, um or typically is resistance to that, and it springs back perfectly straight
Right.
after
Right.
the pressure is taken off of that. So,
Yeah.
um, Andrea and I talked a lot about that, how, you really need to pay attention to how that front end, how flat it is to your block. In other words,
Yeah.
left and the gap between the block and the chassis from the left side and the right side needs to be perfect. I mean, it can't be jacked up on one
Yeah.
side. It's going to make inconsistencies when you put it on the track. So
So the good news that everybody should see and understand is that is the stock chassis and pod that comes with the car.
right, right, that's
We
right.
see lots of people trying to do lots of things for different combinations with the chassis, different combinations with the pod, but on plastic, especially that scale auto for the GT cars, this seems to be the right combination. And Andrea said
Yeah,
that same thing
yeah. He likes the black pod, I think. If
on
I'm not
on the
mistaken.
vintage.
Okay, on the vintage.
On the
Did he run
GT.
the red? He
Hmm.
ran the red? Yeah,
Yeah.
so the idea behind that, I know there's people that have complained about them breaking and things like that, and in a high traction scenario, I think that puts super amounts of stress on a lot of things. So
Yeah.
maybe in an endurance race on wood, I probably wouldn't use that per se, but, the advantages of using those extra hard and extra hard motor pods is that um, the torque of that motor can deflect softer pods,
Right.
and so you don't want deflection. You want stiffness in that mesh and the gear mesh and how that motor is working with the pod. So
Right.
I've always leaned toward the red pods in these cars because those motors just have an extreme amount of torque to them, and you really just have to be able to tame that, if for lack of a better word.
So your body screws are the NSR brass, the upgraded body screws, right?
Yes,
Yeah. And
I
then
usually
you,
run a narrower head in front
yeah,
and a bigger head in back. I
yeah,
think controlling the rear movement of the car is really important, especially on a low traction type of setup, because um, every time that there's movement, lateral movement, and it hits a stopping point, it amplifies that on the track, okay? And I don't think a lot of people understand that or realize that, you know, when you have distance which you have to have distance to have acceleration. But when that chassis or when that screw accelerates into the side of the chassis, it stops, right?
Right.
And there it's pretty abruptly. So if you have that isolated, it it keeps that abrupt hit from taking the rear end of that car and sending it where you don't want it.
Right.
So that's the
And
idea behind that.
and then you're running. The last thing I'll point out, I'm putting it back together, and I did count how many turns. I wrote it down. On the
Okay.
screws, you are putting the little washers. Um,
Yeah, I like to have metal on metal.
yeah.
It's
Again,
I
a
go
lot of
back
this
and
is
forth.
concept, not specific from a tuning standpoint. It's concepts, right? And so that's you like
Right.
metal on metal, so that's a concept that you've adapted to your cars.
Yes. And, I'll try it both ways a lot of times, but
Yeah.
I prefer to have metal on metal. The other thing too that a washer can do is you can tune a washer, believe it or not. Um, and one of the things that you can do is, and Slotting Plus makes washers that you can do this with. You can dial in the size of the hole of the center of the washer. So you can determine how tightly that sets against the shaft of the screw. So you can have a gap there, or you can have a very tight connection there. And that all can affect how the car responds when you're putting it into you know, a race mode or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The one thing that I do think that I could have done or would have done, and I don't, a lot of this I didn't really realize until I got into the race because that's the first time that I was able to see the car, or feel the car running continuously or continuous laps and things like that. Is the front body screw I probably could have loosened up a little bit more to get more body float out of the
Okay.
car. It deslotted a little bit more than I wanted it to, but I had to tighten down that front screw um, to get more traction out of the car. And that's kind of typically an easy way to do that. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's something else that I probably would have changed. So
Yeah. So you were at 1.25 turns on the front, one on the back,
okay, yeah,
and so that makes sense. If you would have maybe brought that in a quarter turn, that may have been enough to help you there, and but still
yeah,
let the
a
car
little
do
bit
what you want to do.
sometimes makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. That's a great car, man. And I tell you what, it's tuned great for my track. It's getting lots of grip. It's the rear end just follows the guide everywhere. It doesn't slide out. I can get on the Excel. I'm not the greatest driver. I will overdrive a car. I will brake too early, and then the very next time brake too late. I'm not super consistent, but that car was very easy for me to go fast and keep it in line. So now this was not quite as good as the GT on my track, but still, 6.9s, 6.8s with this on vintage, and that's a really quick vintage car on a classic car on my track. So let's break this one down. Different chassis and pod.
Right. So that was my car from last year,
Yeah.
which was a second place car last year, and I, I built a Lola, and ultimately, if I probably would have put the motor that's in this car into the Lola, or the pod that's in this car into the Lola, that might have been a way better car. But on some level, I had all these thoughts in my head. And again, I got to the track. I mean, I couldn't practice with that car.
Right.
Um, I had it on the track only to when the second track became operational. I had an opportunity to get on the track to clean it off. So I'd basically run a few laps, clean the tires, put it back on, run a few laps, clean the tires. So I really couldn't like dial that car in either. So sometimes you just have to race with what you have and go with it.
And
But
adjust, whether you adjust in your finger or your controller or both.
right,
You just have to go
that's
with it. Yeah.
exactly right. Which I was doing some controller adjusting as I was driving, as I recall, on the straightaways, to get the car to do what I wanted it to. Because the motor braking, which is another thing about the gearing on that GT car. It has a lot of motor braking when you gear them that way, and that can be advantageous. But when the corners are big sweeping corners, like the first and second corner, off the straightaway, you really have to take out a lot of that dynamic braking out of your controller to get the car to do what you want it to. This
Right.
car, which was geared 1233, which I probably would have geared 1231. But again, this car was really quick on my track and it could overtake cars really well.
Right.
Um, and so I just had to kind of leave it. But um, again, it's a pretty basic setup here that you're seeing. The other thing too, the tires, I I went back and forth whether or not I was going to put fresh silicones on this car because I had only put this car on the track for a handful of laps, and so when when the silicones are super fresh, they are not as good as when you've run like 10 laps or so on them.
Yeah.
So anyway, maybe that was right, maybe that was wrong, I don't know, but same scenario here, right? Trying to isolate the pod to do what I want it to do. The with the tape and dampening as well. Um, Probably could have made some modifications possibly there, but again, it's the front end is set up much the same. I'm not crazy about the blue chassis. I think they're just too soft,
Yeah.
and there's just too much flex in the chassis. So, that's probably something that I would have changed ultimately. But it's a good car. It's a
It's a good car.
it's a fast car. It's a good car. Like I
It's an,
said, if
it's
I
easy.
would have
It's easy
geared
to
it a little bit
drive.
different, yeah, if I would have geared it a little bit different, it would have been even easier to drive. Um, and yeah, same scenario there. Everything perfectly flat.
Yep. Looks good on the block.
Yeah.
Your fronts are in. Um, it's that tripod setup. Um,
Yep.
Wires are nice and tidy. Um, Pod is, it really feels exactly like your GT car. Um,
Yeah. It's very similar.
it kind of pivots off that front screw. Um,
Yep.
the front screw actually has a bigger head than the rear in the pod, so that
Yep.
you don't get that front to back movement. And then you actually have two different pieces of tape. You have a small piece of strapping tape, and then you've got some electrical tape up front.
Yep. I
Again,
like the tape, is people talk about that a lot too. Some places you can use it, some you can't. But
right?
tape is different. The electrical tape, the properties of it are different than the strapping tape, and
Yeah,
so you can use the combinations of tape to dial in what you're trying to dial in the car. And on like I said, on my track, the car was just incredible. Um, but you know it it's not the same track that we were racing on up there. So,
right.
some changes needed to be made. But in general, I really I like that car.
Yeah, I do
And
too.
I enjoyed painting those cars too.
Yeah, you did an
um,
awesome job with the liveries. They look great. The
yeah,
signature TD logo on there looks awesome on the nose. Um,
yeah.
Lexan interior. Just trying to
Hmm.
go. You're just trying to get the center of gravity as low as possible. So get
Yeah, yeah.
that
Just
weight
take the weight
down.
off the top of the
If it's
car.
legal to run it, it's probably worth changing out and going for that.
Yeah,
Um,
notice that rear view mirror on the body is still intact.
yeah, well done.
Pretty
It's a little loose.
pretty impressive. I left it a little loose just in case there was an incident. But
It's usually the first
I
thing that
love those
goes.
mirrors, man. I know you can take them off there. You don't have to have them on there, but I just love I
Oh yeah,
love I love the mirrors.
I
So
love the 908, man. It's one of my favorite race cars of
yeah,
all time.
yeah,
But
it is.
but this whole time, I don't know what people will learn from this video outside of the fact that you've developed your, Ian and Todd talk about concepts. They have a great video about um, talking about concepts, and you've developed a great tuning concept that obviously works, and it translates from NSR to scale auto to really any your slottets, any of your cars that you build. You're very consistent across the manufacturers. There are little things you have to do for each. They have their quirks, right? But I feel
Yep.
like, man, you've really got it nailed with the NSR cars. They're great. They're a joy to drive, man. I'm going to admit to you that I've probably put about 200 laps on each of these.
No wonder they're losing you gotta well, I'm not gonna mention manufacturers or anything, but put some fresh tires on those things and you're really turned some serious laps.
Let's see. Do I have any? Let me see. Do I have any tires? I do. I've got
Oh boy.
I've got
Oh
some
boy.
tires.
Saturday will be fun.
This box will be gone on Saturday, dude. I don't know where it's going to be, but it's not going to be in this room. I won't have any left. I'm joking.
I will say this, and you can kind of peel back one of those tires on the rear end of those cars or of that car. They are slip on tires,
Yep.
and the wheels, you can show the wheel, the center rib of the wheel if you want. So I put a lot of effort into those foam inserts, and that some people say, well, maybe that's one of the secrets or whatever, and so I wanted to show that.
Yeah.
And on on wood tracks, when they use the Airad wheels like those are, I know, it makes a big difference in keeping the tire from caving in and things like that. And there is a special preparation for plastic track versus wood track with those inserts. And like I said, I can go into that at a later date or whatever if people are interested. But
Yeah.
I really like the support that those give to the tire. I don't like to run it just with a slip on and the complete air gap. And, you know, consistency of that tire and across the grip zone or the contact patch of that tire, um, and is just way better
Yeah.
when you do that correctly. But you can screw that up really bad if you're not taking some time. I was trying to explain it to you on the phone
Yeah.
before the race or
Yeah.
whatever, and I think there was some, you know, you're like, well, I don't know if that's going to happen, but
Yeah.
anyway,
I was running
I
out of
do think
time, but
right. So I wanted to show that to everybody because I think that that's something that does make a difference on both cars. So
yeah.
I didn't want to miss that because if somebody does want to try to um do that or use that technique, I'm more than happy to try to help them or explain that to them. But not every race allows that.
Right.
And so this race does. And you know, so there you go.
Yeah. I mean, reading and understanding the rules is we've talked about that over and over again, how important that is. And it's why, Greg and I sat down and kind of walked through the rules, and he pointed out things that, gray areas that guys would ask questions about in that video, hoping to clear it up a little bit so guys didn't have to ask so many questions. But it's super important to understand what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And, those are little things that are allowed in that race that are probably worth the effort, right?
Yeah,
The
absolutely. I mean,
the
you
juice
have
is worth
to
the squeeze.
Right. You gotta try to maximize everything, and quite frankly, wheels and tires are so hugely important. It's no one's gonna argue against that.
Right.
And so if you can optimize that part of the build, of course, within the rules, and you know, uh, doing things correctly, but a lot of testing and a lot of trial and error goes into all this stuff.
Right.
So, it's really hard for me just to come out and say, okay, it's just like the front end of the car, right? Okay, just raise your wheels, push them to the inside, and you're going to win. It's just, that's
It's
not
yeah.
happening. It's
No,
just a
it's
part
not that.
of what is going on with the car, right? And so I have to try to, let people know that. But according to the people that just raised the wheels, and a lot of them had a lot of success. So clearly they're doing something right with the rest of their car, or
Right.
it can really get ugly. But um,
I mean, I
anyway,
think
I
there
think
are people who are
overall,
comfortable. Like I love really. I adapted to that type of car really quick. That setup, um, and I think it's because of my driving style. But there are others that it just won't work because of just their driving style. Um,
right,
it's it's something you would have to practice and learn if it's not natural for you. So, but I
right,
know when Andrea talked about it last year, we all rushed home and went, "Okay, I'm going to try this." And you raised it up, and we learned a lot, right? And I think that's why we
right.
wanted to do this video. We want people to learn, and next year be even more competitive, because it's what makes it fun for everyone. Is you can
Absolutely.
improve each year and do better and learn more about your cars. Steve, man, thanks for your time. Thanks for
Oh,
joining.
thank you.
And guys, if you don't already follow Steve on Instagram, it's the TD Slot Sports is your handle out there. Go follow lots of tuning tips, lots of great looking slot cars, lots of fun on that channel. So go give him a follow if you're on Instagram, and then he's always in the chat on Tuesday nights. So don't be
Yeah,
afraid to throw questions out there. We have a lot of guys that love to answer questions and love to help others. And Steve, you're one of them. I appreciate you.
absolutely, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. So we'll catch up soon.
Okay, take it easy.